Alright, so let's continue talking about genetics. As we've been discussing so far, there's lots of exceptions to the Mendelian rules. Incomplete dominance is definitely an exception to the rule. It doesn't fit one dominant, one recessive scenario. You have three variations. So you don't really call anybody dominant or anybody recessive because they all, kind of three variations. Another exception to the rule here is this scenario called pleiotropy. Now, pleiotropy is when you have one gene that will influence multiple traits. Okay, so it's not this clean, simple, big A, or big A, little a, etc. equals this one single trait. It's multiple traits. So the human example here is sickle cell. So there's a gene that causes the protein to form in a certain way to give your red blood cell, a specific shape. So there's a gene for that, a gene for the shape of your red blood cell. Again, keep in mind, genes equal proteins, proteins equal expression of traits. So the normal red blood cell over here on the right looks kind of like a big jelly donut. Nice big oval. It's officially called a biconcave disc. It has this normal shaped protein that gives it that particular structure. That enables it to carry oxygen and move through the bloodstream, passes through the arteries and the veins without problems, and you're healthy because of the shape of your red blood cell. Well, if you inherit sickle cell, now you get a problem. Now we get into a scenario in which your blood cell is this kind of curved, or what we call the sickle shape. And the reason? Your protein is not shaped correctly. So change the shape of the protein, change the shape of the red blood cell, you change the function of everything. So now you have problems transporting oxygen. You have growth issues, developmental issues, clogged arteries, heart issues, blood issues, and sometimes death because these blood cells don't move through the bloodstream very easily. So that is an example called pleiotropy, in which we have one gene that will influence multiple traits. So genetic engineering, if you know the gene that's causing all these problems, if you fix that gene, now you fix potentially a lot of problems. So there's some possibilities there when we get into genetic engineering. Okay, another example, doesn't fit Mendelian rules, is this thing called codominance. In codominance, you're going to have two alleles that actually share dominance. So the only example I want you to focus on in people is blood typing. That is a codominance example here, blood typing. So think about human blood types. We have A, we have O, we have B, and we have AB. So in human blood, A is a dominant variation. A actually blocks O. So A can dominate and block O. But B is also a dominant variation. B can go and block O as well. If A and B show up together, that's when we get the AB blood type, the fourth blood type, or the third in this example. And then the truly recessive blood type in the human population is O. O is due to two recessive little alleles. We use little i's to represent blood typing alleles that are recessive. So think about yourselves and your family tree. What is your blood type? What is the blood type of your parents, your grandparents, and so on? Anybody in the family who has a blood type of O or the blood type of AB, you know exactly your genetics. If you are an AB individual in the room, your blood type is A and B. You have an A allele, you have a B allele. if you're blood type of O. You have an O allele and a second O allele. It's the only way you express O blood type. But for all of us others, if we're blood type A, are you dominant A? Dominant A? Are you homozygous? Or are you actually a carrier? Big A, and then do you carry the O allele? You don't know that by looking at you. I stick your finger, put it on a slide, determine your blood type. I can tell you if you're A, but I can't tell you if you're homozygous or a carrier for the O allele. That's why I want to look at your family tree. Now, anybody who is a B, same scenario. Are you a B individual with two big B's? Or are you a B individual that is a carrier for O? So I'll show you a quick example. I have B blood. My wife has A blood. Our son has O blood. That's what we can see. We can physically see that on a blood typing test. Those are the phenotypes. But the genetics, if he is an O, I know his genetics. Recessive, recessive. In order to produce an O child, I have to be a carrier. In order to produce an O child, my wife also has to be a carrier. So that's how we determined if we're homozygous or heterozygous, by looking at our child. You could go up and look at your parents and then figure it down to you. Same pattern. Okay? So codominance is another example of genetics that, it just doesn't fit those rules. Okay? So, again, not that Mendel did a bad job, but there's still a lot to learn about genetics. So here's another fun one that we're actually discovering is very, very common. This is a thing called polygenic inheritance. So poly means lots of genes, lots of genetics, multiple genes. Those genes determine one single trait. So height in humans. Multiple genes come together to express your particular height. It's kind of like a combination lock. 27, 14, 8, now it's express. So you combined multiple genes to express the trait of your height. So if there's a problem with a expression of a trait that is polygenic, that's really tough to figure out how to fix that with genetic engineering. Because which gene actually influences the feature of the trait that you want to change? And if you change that one gene, will that truly change the trait? Better example, or as good, better example, would be skin color. Our skin color is due to multiple genes here. All right, so think about individuals who have all recessive alleles. Light complexion over here. Individuals who have all dominant alleles. Dark expression. So skin color is due to pigment production. Your pigment production is determined by your genetics. The genetics say this is how many little pigment factories you're going to be producing or you're going to have in your skin cells. The environment then does play a role. The environment causes the factories to kick on and produce pigment or not produce as much pigment. Okay? But back to our imaginary scenario, say this individual and the individual on the far right were to come together and produce a child. Child inherits one big A, one little a, one big B, one little b, one big C, one little c. Their physical expression somewhere in the middle of the parents. What skin tone? So again, look around. Look at the human population. How many variations of skin tone do we have out there? That is dictated by multiple genes and influenced by the environment. So we take a look at this group of 4. Odds are the young lady on the far right, she has recessive alleles, light pigmentation. Young lady on the far left, lots of dominant alleles, dark pigmentation, the two folks in the middle, a mixing and a matching, some dominant, some recessive. But think about the mixture of genetics across cultures now, across the human population, and how we have so much variation out there in the human population when it comes to skin tone. All right, so polygenic inheritance, multiple genes to express one trait. All right, now this is a fun one. This is called phenotypic plasticity. All right, in phenotypic plasticity, let me get rid of the bold here, the environment helps determine your phenotype, your physical expression, what you physically will look like here. So skin tone, the environment plays a role in that. That's why some people have a tan and others don't. So here's the example. Himalayan rabbits. Temperature, body temperature dictates the expression of hair color. So if you have a warmer environment on the rabbit's body, it will produce white. So that's why the core of the body is all white, because the body temperature is actually higher. If the body temperature is a bit lower, like in the ears and the feet and the nose, then the expression changes and now you express black hair. So black hair is a response to cooler body temperature. Black hair absorbs more energy from the sun, warms up, compensates for a lack of body temperature. So it's evolutionarily advantageous. Basically, it's a good thing if your ears and your nose and your feet and your tail are black, because it's going to keep those appendages warmer than if you had white hair there. So the experiment to do, take a rabbit, you need the Himalayans, get a pair of gloves and some barber clippers or a razor, shave a section of the rabbit's back, and then put an ice pack on it for a couple days. Now remember, these hair cells, once you've cut them off, the hair cells are going to go through the cell cycle. Immediately, they're going to keep churning through that cell cycle, and 24 hours later, they've replicated. 48, they've doubled again. Now they're doubling and doubling and doubling. So it's not going to take long for the rabbit's hair to grow back. But the cool thing here is, when the rabbit's hair is growing back because of the temperature difference, or in an environment where the temperature has changed, and now that cold spot on the back of the rabbit, the proteins being produced by the ribosomes change color. So they express differently. The temperature dictates darker expression. So you're going to get a black patch on the back of your rabbit due to the environment influencing the physical expression. All right? So now odds are we don't have access to a Himalayan rabbit. But, and if you guys do it, please post some pictures. This would be awesome. I'd love to see this happen. Siamese cats. These cats have the same gene. They have a gene that influences expression of hair color. So what I think would be fun, make sure you have permission, but incredibly entertaining to do, would be to take a Siamese cat, shave that cat, and do the same thing. Put the ice pack on. Get it to grow back the hair in a darker color. You could create a cat that looks like a skunk. Imagine that as a cool Halloween costume. Now the nice thing is, once the black hair cells fall out eventually, and they will, then the hair is going to come back white. So it's not like it's going to hurt the cat. It's not going to impact it long term. It's just a temporary change in the color of the cat's hair because of that colder expression. Okay, so phenotypic plasticity. Lots of ways to play around with this. We call it tan lines in the summer. All right, so genetics, it's a lot we still are learning, and a lot of different scenarios that we're just getting a handle on. So we have one more problem, one more genetic scenario to talk about in our next lecture. It'll be fairly short, but we're going to talk about what's called sex-linked or X-linked inheritance.